So the last part of the three parts of the Wing Chun Chi Shi breakdown is ironically the first part, which is the Bao Quan, or the chambering of the fists. Um, I think that the chambering position really depends more on style and lineage than that there's really a best place to chamber the fist. And that in turn, I think, is more dictated by intention and mindset, how you want to use the chambering of the fist. The one that I see the most in Chinese martial arts is chambering right underneath the armpit. That brings the fist really close to the body and the elbow far behind the body, making a good rearward strike. What you often see in terms of karate is chambering right at the hips, right at the belt line or the obi line, and that I think is good for two reasons. One, that's the natural structure that you do a bong sao or a tan sao, and then you just keep that structure and swing it back. It naturally floats to roughly the hip area. And secondly, in the traditional context of karate, where they would hold weapons in the belt, chambering at the hip makes it easy to draw a weapon and deploy it. Whereas if it's up high, that's a little harder. I do think that that's more historical context, more interesting karate history than practically applicable. But if you can pull it off, you can pull it off. There's nothing wrong with it. Though I think the one that is possibly the most interesting is the mid ground between the armpit and the belt, which is the floating ribs, or the mid rib, as I've heard it called in Chinese. Many flank blocks are used to clear strikes coming into this area, and those usually take one of two forms: either swiping down around the mid rib level or swiping all the way back to the hip. And I think those are, legitimate techniques. Those are used to protect those areas, especially when you're fighting sideways, perhaps in a nihandachi stance or horse stance, and you overextend yourself and something comes in here. You can, of course, flank block, or you could chamber. And chambering either across or right to the rib is a legitimate defense. It does work. I don't think it's necessarily as effective as a first line of defense. I think, either a mid block or a downward block in a karate context is a better option, and a downward block or sweeping block is a better option in a Southern martial arts context. But I do think it does work. I think it's a good last ditch oh shit block. You really overcommitted, and it's a reflex. And one thing that you don't always get an explanation for, at least not unless you're at the higher levels or you're in an internal system, is that many times you're supposed to go from Wu Ji and pull, maybe even like actual clawing or grabbing motions, pull up chi from the ground into your body with the Bao Quan. And that might be that you're bringing to the belt line because you're trying to focus on the hara or the dantian, or possibly going up to the middle dantian or the heart chakra. I think that'll depend on your system, your lineage, your qigong ability. I don't think that there's really a right or wrong answer. The biggest thing is also that, again, with the mindset, you might be looking at this from a striking context. So, this is the best place to anchor the fist for punching. Well, I've known several grapplers that they use chambering positions like this, particularly around the floating ribs. And I've seen two different wrestlers in a stand-up context, they bring their hands in. And I asked one of them why, and they said that they were worried about wrist ties. They wanted to keep someone from grabbing their wrist and getting an advantage or an advantageous hold on their arm. So they're pulling their arms in so that they have to reach to them, which gives them the ability to counterattack and reach out and go for their tie, kind of making your opponent come to you. And I think that's a legitimate strategy. They're looking at it as they want to keep their weaknesses as unexploitable as possible, while at the same time, maximizing their ability to strike out. And I think that's just as legitimate as anchoring for a striking context. So I think it really depends on your mindset and how you want to use the chamber. In traditional Wing Chun, since it's a striking art, sure, they would say that you're elbowing behind and you're getting ready to strike from that position. That doesn't mean that you can't keep those grappling principles in mind. It doesn't mean that they're not there, it's just that they're not at the forefront. So if you're doing this set, look at it from a grappling context. You are pulling your hands away from your opponent and you're chambering to strike. I think that about covers it. Again, offensively, it's a striking position that you can strike from, and you're elbowing behind. Defensively, you're keeping your hands away from your opponent. In a grappling context, that's also the case. It's essentially you're playing that grappling game. The only other thing is that in a chin-na or joint grappling context, I have heard, especially in Southern martial arts, where you'll see a wide open movement and then they rechamber. That is potentially grabbing an arm or head. The technique comes in, they block and they wrap around and pulling it to the hip. They're rooting it to their body as a lock. And you could do that with a headlock, you could do that with a wrist lock or arm lock. And I think that's legitimate. I just think most people don't think about that. So those are some of the applications of the Bao Quan. After this, I'm going to get back into the actual movements of Si Lung Tao. I know it's taken a while. Sorry about that. But we'll get to it soon. Until then, keep your e-tanks full.